Shipwrecked 64, launched 1997, tells the story of a man named Daniel who found an old N64 cartridge and decided to sell it on eBay, where a team of programmers tested it out only to find it wouldn't run on any emulator, to which they said, alright, let's make this happen. And they made it happen. Fast forward, and the game lands in your hands, the player. Now at first glance, the game may seem innocent enough, but oh boy is there a lot of stuff in there. The game starts off by introducing our main characters, Buggy Beaver, Olive Otter, and Giovanni the Goose, who crashed their boat onto an island, and almost as if it were a miracle, all of them survived, unfortunately. Once you wake up, you realize your friends have been taken by a pack of wolves, whose only reasoning was ruining the peace of the island. Excuse me? Now it is your job to complete tasks for the wolves, like connecting 20 coconuts, or turning off multiple ovens so they don't blow up in your face, or even going to an abandoned ship, which for some reason has a weird creature that's just trying to kill you and has no apparent cue as to when to attack you. Like sometimes it's like very peaceful, but other times it just wants to murder you for no reason. So far, the only things you can tell are off about the game is the weird creature that's following you, some random signs with weird characters on them, and some random doors that don't seem to open. Following these events, you meet another person, animal, hybrid, I don't know what this counts as, named Walter Walrus, who, following your steps, also got stuck on the island. How so, you might be wondering? Well, he also crashed his boat, of course, right? He got his boat stuck on top of a hill. I genuinely just don't know how he did that. I don't know what laws of physics apply in this game or what's going on. But like, how do you get your boat stuck on top of a hill? Entering this mini game, you are told not to move when it gets dark because strange things happen. What type of strange things happen, you might ask? You get killed by an invisible creature. Now, if you play all the games and manage to beat all of them, you get to go home with your friends, and it's a happy ending for everyone, right? Right? If somehow you manage to lose every single game, then things start to get a bit strange. Starting off with Olive Otter, if you beat her to death multiple times, you get a cutscene of whatever this is. Get that thing away from me. Following that, a different cutscene of a woman named Olivia Finch filing a complaint against a man named Brandon Lester, who has been showing up to their house dressed as Buggy Beaver, unprecedented.
Hello, this is Olivia Finch. I'd like to please submit a complaint. Anonymously, please.
Oh, but that's not the worst part. The worst part is that Brandon let the intrusive thoughts win, and he started smashing his head against their door for no reason, and just like left a very gross stain on it. Why would you accept this, Olivia? Like, first off, he shows to your home multiple times, and then you decide, I'm not gonna file a complaint until he finally decides to smash his head against my door. Like, losing by burning the kitchen down in Giovanni's game, you get a cutscene of Buggy Beaver holding someone's face and smashing it against a wall until they are left barely conscious. How can I tell? Because literally the next scene is Buggy Beaver putting their face on a stove, and they are heard crying and screaming. So, I mean, at that point, they're dead. Following this up by losing in Walter White's game, we get a cutscene of a man late at night who received a phone call and realizing Buggy Beaver has infiltrated the facility and decided to murder them with a chair. So far, if you've been paying attention, you would know I mentioned a few doors that wouldn't open. But as soon as we let our friends die, for some reason the locks on the doors magically disappear. Who took the locks off? I don't know. Point is, the door leads us to specific areas that seem very out of place with the world that is currently presented to us. Traversing these areas, we will find our friends again, but upon interacting with them, we get a weird report of sorts, showing the name of the Starling, which appears to be a weird creature experiment thing going on here. It also shows the deformities on the creatures, the name of a person who died, their cause of death, and many more. Once we complete these new tasks, we are met with this weird wooden creature who tells us to go find them, and upon interacting with them, we are granted access to phone calls which reveal a little more into what's actually going on here. While listening to these phone calls, we gather new information about 1. The person who's in charge of making the game, Connor, and 2. The person in charge of the whole company, Mark. Mark contacts Connor to make a video game about the pop culture icon at the time, Buggy Beaver, to which Connor agrees. Continuing the phone calls, we realize that Mark isn't happy with the progress the game is making, so he decides to cut the funding for the game, leaving multiple people unemployed. This is shown in the debug room where various sides blame Mark for cutting the game's funding and leaving multiple people with no money. Connor, in an act of desperation, leaves a message to his son Pat to add some files onto his computer. Following this, we get a cutscene of a man jumping off the roof of a house, and then the game ending. So that leaves us with a lot of questions. As a curious little man myself, I decided to look into the game's files. Digging into the files, we get a lot of videos that answer a lot of our questions, but also make many more questions. In the video titled Bad Ending, we get a message from Connor thanking everybody who made the game's development possible, And by thanking them, I mean talking badly about them, and for good reason too. Hilda, who is going to be Connor's wife, left and stood up at their own wedding, presumably for losing all his money. Mark, his client of course, cut the funding for the game, leaving many to suffer. Bucky, or Brandon, however you want to call him, was a murderer. He also mentioned his son Pat, stating he's the only reason we're seeing any of this in the game we got. Because let's be honest, Connor is probably dead. But what a Chad move to expose this entire company before dying. In a separate video titled Death Gary, we get a deformed image of Giovanni the Goose claiming to be a man named Gary Wilson, who explains they were a worker at a company called Broadside, and how one night they decided to go to the kitchen after the shift, for whatever reason, only to meet Bucky who... Yeah. Similarly, in Death Nathan, we get an image of Walter Walrus claiming to be a man named Nathan Stewart, who was also a worker at Broadside. Unfortunately for our friend here, they were working late at night sending an email when they found Bucky Beaver, who hunted them for sport and killed them with a chair. Now, for Olive Otter, we actually get two videos which start pretty much the same. A woman named Olivia Finch.
Is this Olivia Finch?
Now that's a name I recognize. Worked as a voice actress at Broadside when she was suddenly asked to meet someone late at night at the lake. They were like, hey man, can you go to the lake at night? And she was like, sure. That's not creepy at all. This is the only character that doesn't get a proper cutscene as to what happened, but in the second version of this video, we actually see that Olivia somehow ends up in the lake and they drown to death. This is confirmed by videos Water 2 and Drowned. All of these videos end with the year of their death being in 1990, 7 years before the game was even released. Meaning that Mark knew all of this was going on and he was like, I'm not gonna do anything about it. Information which later landed into Connor's lap, who, in a furious rage, decided to expose it to the entire world. We can deduce Brandon, who was the guy in the Bucky suit killing everyone, overdosed after the game was released, since Connor is referring to him as alive in the Bad Ending video. This is also apparent in the phone calls. And that is the full story of Shipwrecked 64. Alright, look, so I know there's a lot of stuff I left out. I know there are many YouTube videos, many ARG YouTube videos, the weird cutscenes that play when there's the weird characters in there, the red room in the coconut minigame, the text file saying I still love you Connor, the two new videos with the one with the weird blue bunny who talks backwards, this weird man named Rex, I don't know who that is, and the most important mystery of them all, how Walter Walrus got their boat stuck on top of a hill, like seriously. Thank you so much for watching that video, I hope you enjoyed it. Now I know a lot of this information is probably invalid since the creator of the game actually explained that a lot of the videos that are in the contents are just old files that are not up to date, so they can't be trusted as canon. But I didn't realize this until after I made this video, so it's kind of a bummer, but I mean, still.